When I first encountered the Samsung MicroRGB TV last year at IFA Berlin, it only came in one gigantic screen size of 115 inches, and I didn't bring my calibration equipment there to test it. Now here we have the smaller 65-inch model. This is the 65 R95H MicroRGB TV from Samsung. And this time around, I don't have much time, but I've managed to put my meters on the screen, and you know me, how I like some good probing. And HDR peak brightness measured 2300 or 2400 nits on a 10% window at the 65 white point, and more than 700 nits full screen. And this is very useful for watching in a bright room, and in conjunction with the glare-free 3.0 coating on this display, which is matte in terms of the finish, it can actually reduce the amount of reflection and be able to overcome any bright ambient light in the room to try and give you a watchable picture. Now, I know some of you may prefer a glossy finish, I myself included, because of the improved contrast and perceived depth that a glossy finish can bring to the experience. But for some of you out there, you may have a room that cannot be light controlled at all, and the last thing you want is various reflections on screen, spoiling your viewing experience. And this is where Samsung's glare-free 3.0 coating and also the profuse light output from this microRGB TV can help. We measured REC 2020 coverage to exceed 94% in UV terms, thanks to the narrow spectral bandwidth provided by the microRGB backlight. And if you look at the design here, it is very impressive because it has an infinity design where the bezels are super thin. You can see the picture filling up the screen with barely any black borders around it, and this gives a floating in appearance that we like so much. It sits on a central stand, and interestingly, it actually is slanted slightly backwards if you look at it from the side. This may not actually concern you if you are watching in the front, but this is similar to some of the designs of Samsung's previous 8K TVs where there's a slight backward slant. So just bear that in mind, and maybe if you are that sort of person who is bothered about this sort of thing, then you may want to consider wall mounting it. In terms of the panel itself, it is a VA type LCD panel, and clearly you can see from the subpixel macro shot here that it is slightly obscured by the front matte surface coating. Samsung's local dimming cannot be switched off entirely from the user menu, but using certain specialized test pattern, I measured the native contrast ratio of this VA type LCD panel to be around 4700 to 1, which is fairly decent by VA LCD panel standards. But with VA type LCD panel, one downside, it's the viewing angle, and certainly you can even see it when I actually take this footage of the screen uniformity. First of all, I have to praise Samsung for making a fairly clean screen for an LCD without much dirty screen effect or banding when I go through full field gray slides. But as I cycle through them, you can maybe even notice that on the sides it will darken very slightly. This is because of the viewing angle drop-off caused by the VA type LCD panel, because the contrast and also the color saturation will drop off ever so slightly. And even if you are sitting in front of the screen, because the sides of the picture is always at an angle to your view, you will always see some sort of vignetting effect, so to speak, not only on full field gray slides, but also in certain color slides as well. So I didn't really have much time to test this TV, but at least I managed to measure the input lag on this 65-inch R95H. And somewhat surprisingly, input lag is a bit high at 120 FPS, coming at 11 milliseconds. And bizarrely, when I engaged the Game Motion Plus setting, which is not meant to be operational at 120 Hz, it actually went down to around maybe 7 or 8 milliseconds. So I don't know what's going on, and I didn't really have time to troubleshoot. At 60 frames per second, the input lag measured 13 milliseconds on this Samsung R95H MicroRGB TV. And using the Game Motion Plus setting, which introduces some motion interpolation for some of you out there who prefer to play 30 FPS games at a smoother frame rate, then the input lag will go up to either 33 milliseconds at level 1 or more than 70 milliseconds at level 2. And level 2 is probably the level which is more useful because that entails some sort of jitter reduction or blur reduction that is more than 0, so that you can actually smooth out the gameplay in 30 FPS games. And 70 milliseconds, in my opinion, is on the high side, and most self-respecting gamers out there wouldn't entertain the sort of input lag figure. So again, I don't know whether this is a pre-production model or whether I did anything wrong at this point, but certainly it is something that I will investigate if I manage to get a production model into my test lab for review. And motion performance is very similar to what I found on Samsung's 2026 OLEDs, in that the 24p motion in HDR is improved in terms of the absence of motion hiccups previously observed on older Samsung TVs, but it also suffered from some 50 Hz microstutter when I played my usual broadcast content on the TV through an external port. The local dimming is very difficult for me to assess in this sort of bright environment, and I couldn't get the room dark enough, and I also didn't have time to actually look at it properly. But superficially, looking at this famous scene from Gravity where Sandra Bullock is tumbling through space, it looked okay to my eyes without any obvious luminous fluctuations or excessive shadow detail loss. But if you're undecided whether you should go for the Samsung MicroRGB TV or stick with OLED, one place where you can get good advice is at Richer Sounds, a trusted British AV retailer with more than 50 stores in the UK, who provides 6 years warranty on the vast majority of TVs if you join the company's VIP club. You'll get the best deals through VIP exclusive in-store only prices, complimentary gifts or freebies. So go visit your local Richer Sounds store or call telesales for your next TV purchase. Thanks again for your support. Okay, if you are interested in Samsung's MicroRGB TV, you may also want to learn a bit more about their OLED offerings, in which case you might want to check out my full review of the flagship S99H or USA S95H here.